Thank you for joining the Once Changing the World, which is India's first future tech meets sustainability podcast. And today I'm delighted and honored to have with me Kate O'Neill, who's the founder of KO Insights, a strategic advisory firm committed to improving human experience scale. Her clients include Google, Adobe, IBM, Yale University, the City of Amsterdam, and the United Nations. Kate is ex-Netflix and author of various books, including A Future So Bright, Tech Humanist, and Pixels and Place. She also hosts the Tech Humanist, a show that explores how technology impacts society and humanity and how we can use technology to create a better future. So, Kate, really appreciate you taking time and being part of our humble podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Eddie.
Your book, it talks about the bright future of humanity. I would love to learn a little bit about that because, currently we just still reeling from COVID and there's various dynamics which is happening around the world, which is not so cool. So when you say the bright future of humanity, it will be cool if you can elaborate on that.
I'd say that my book talks about the potential for a bright future for humanity. It is not about the future that we necessarily are going to have. It is the future that we can have if we commit to doing so. So looking at the opportunity for bringing our resources together and really solving the problems that face humanity using the resources we have, such as emerging technology, which, so many kinds of emerging technology, such as AI, various forms of AI, have the potential to have the capacity and scale like no tool before has ever offered us. And so if we use it correctly and deploy it toward the model that I propose in A Future So Bright is aligning with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and making sure that we're really amplifying and accelerating the motion toward those goals, then we really do stand a chance of having a better future. But the book also really makes the point of breaking down the dichotomy that we normally use when we talk about the future of talking about dystopia or utopia, and says that's not a useful framework anymore because we don't believe utopia is on the table. So that's out of the equation. And that leaves us only talking about dystopia. And so everything becomes a question of how dystopic any given thing is, which isn't a healthy or productive way to talk about the future. So it's proposing a different, more empowered, more useful framework for making strategic decisions about the best possible future we want to have. And that's what I introduce as the term is strategic optimism. So not just optimism, it's not just looking at a bright future. It's saying if we want a good future, if we want to have the best possible future, we need to clearly outline what that is, figure out what all the risks and harms we need to mitigate are, but really work with all our strategic insight and foresight toward achieving that best possible vision.
Right. So Kate, I would like you to elaborate on this a little bit because, the tech is growing exponentially. And yes. I think almost all of these tech stack, are converging, right from AI converging with your Web3 to Metaverse to, eventually we'll be having like a working quantum computer. Now, tech is never good or bad. It's us, the humans, how we choose to use it. So you pointed out, so we need to be very cognizant about how we use it. So we'll delve into the brighter part of it. You mentioned about, there's only two scenarios, whether utopian or dystopian. Then there's also a bunch of group of people who say that it could be the protopian, which is the middle ground. So maybe paint a picture of what the world would look like if we would have to make a wrong choice with future. What would the world look like?
With things going wrong looks like, biased algorithms and people being caught up societally in the implications of that, whether that's a criminal justice sort of implication or a misapplied healthcare sort of application, people being arrested for the wrong crime, people being treated for the wrong illness, or not being treated for the right illness that they have because they're being profiled based on demographics that they fit, but that are misclassified by AI or by algorithms, by data sets. We understand all of these consequences already. And if you're working in and around data and technology, you already understand that these are things that are happening now in the world and are certainly due to be happening more with the power and the prevalence of data and technology tools. I think that the point isn't so much trying to understand the worst that can happen, because I think we all have pretty clear sense of that. I think the point is trying to understand that we are not enslaved to the worst that can happen. We don't have to submit to that. We have ways of getting involved and being more empowered and more decisive about what it is we're trying to do. And so that involves everyone. That means that corporate leaders, that technology decision makers are involving responsible tech strategists and ethicists, earlier in discussions, that they're involving the communities who are impacted by the technologies and products that they launch in discussions, that designers and strategists are thinking about these inclusive models that look at the kinds of impacts that the technology is going to have. Those kinds of things have to be part of the equation. And then, on the side of, society, civil society, we all have an opportunity to be involved in our communities, in collective action of various sorts, in democratic government actions to the extent that we have them in our countries. That is an option for most of us at some level. So, we all have a piece and a part of this. It is not merely submitting to the worst possible outcomes. But I think we all have a pretty clear sense of what those are. They're not a mystery anymore. I think most of us are in tune with some of the things that have been going wrong with AI and with algorithms for some time now, and the direction that they stand to go without us being more intentional about their direction.
Yes, I mean, there's a select people who understand tech, understand the implications of it going wrong. So there are people who have been highlighting the existential threat capabilities from AI to biotech to nanotech to quantum computing and so on. So obviously painting the bright side. And like I said earlier, I mean, it's not the tech, and the tech is never good or bad. It's the humans, the fringe element, who ends up using that. So the reason I wanted you to kind of paint that picture of, what a dystopian future could look like, so that we stop underestimating technology and collectively come together and find ways to keep our problems aside and find ways to create technology which is meaningful and truly something which takes humanity forward. Because for the first time in human history, we have a tech stack which is self-improving. And what that could be doing is I think neither the brightest minds kind of understand, because till now AI is pretty much a black box. We don't completely understand what is going on behind the algorithm. So I think we need to stop underestimating the capabilities of tech and find ways to find regulations or find ways to build technologies that can do something really better for the future of humanity. I have been living in a city for the longest time. 50 years of my life, I was living in Bombay City. But then post-COVID, it gave me the opportunity to kind of look at another place which is environmentally friendly, not just for me, my entire family. What do you think, since you talk about the future of city, what do you think the future of city is going to look like? Because, there is a reverse migration of sort also, because the people who have the affording classes are now understanding the city is like, it's like a bottle with a lot of eggs that's being stacked on it and it's about to explode. What is a sustainable city, and what could be the future, I mean, of a smart city, which could be like really sustainable for everyone?
So I think there is a sense that there's a reverse migration, but there's also been migration to cities, and there's nothing slowing that down really in the long run. We do understand that the cities are attractive in terms of their economic opportunity, in terms of the community that they offer. And so, more and more people will be living in cities, and there's any number of predictions, that 70% of the world's population will live in cities by 2030 or 2050, depending on whom you consult. There's a lot of numbers around that, and I think obviously I think already we can think about the majority of the world's population being in cities. That what matters to me is not so much that we have the majority of population living in cities, but that we're making meaningful experiences as a result of them. The work I do with cities is so much about thinking about what are the different constituencies that the city exists to serve? So there's obviously the residents, there's the people who work there, and there are the people who are traveling through there that have business to do there, that are, that want some recreation there, that are looking for, a memorable life experience there. All of those kinds of constituencies have to coexist in the same space. And it's a difficult balance to strike. But of course, the residents and the people who work there generally take the top priority. And so we need to make life better for them. We need to make life comfortable for them. We need to be thinking too about ways that cities provide a really interesting opportunity for like agile experimentation for policymaking. And for, if we think that there's an opportunity to do, like, for example, facial recognition bans. There have been bans in cities, in various cities around this country, the United States, and around the world that have experimented with saying, in this city, you are not allowed to use facial recognition in any kind of public deployment without, there being, some sort of signage posted, some sort of consent that's been given or granted by people who are entering the space or whatever. And that is an interesting experiment, because we could never see that kind of policy rolled out country by country. That just isn't likely to happen unless it's a country that also happens to be a city like Singapore. But you're just not likely to see that on a country level until there's enough data that has been collected about how this can effectively be deployed. So you have the opportunity in these cities to try out things and see, did it work? Did people really resent it? Did the experience play out as well as we thought? Can we get some data and some feedback? And how can we then see it play out across maybe a state or a province? How can we see it play out in a region? And I think that's a really powerful dynamic to understand what's the impact of, 15-minute cities, for example, this approach that says that things should be, the transport should be able to connect people to every need they have within a 15-minute walk or bike ride or easy public transportation connection within a city. That implication it may seem disconnected from people who are living rurally, but I think the implication in a pixels in place kind of environment is that we also have the opportunity to service people who are not living in cities more effectively because of what we learn from 15-minute cities, and be able to create infrastructure that actually houses and takes care of people who are more in outlying areas through digital services, through technology infrastructure. So there's incredible opportunity, I think, to use cities as a testing and training ground for the way we take care of people collectively and the way we take care of people in the world in general. They're an incredibly rich source of experimentation for the SDGs and for just improving life in general through that pixels in place approach.
Right. Can you elaborate on this, on what this future of cities could look like? Because you pointed out, there are spaces or cities which are now understanding that too much of tech is not good and trying to ban these facial recognition apps, and then there are like places like Neom, which is going all out, trying to build a city which is foundationally the tech is going to play like a huge role over there. What kind of cities are going to be like the future perfect cities?
I think, there's a good, that's one of the advantages I'm saying. I think that it's great that there are cities trying such different approaches, because we can get the feedback and the data from these, and we can integrate, how effectively did a ban on facial recognition take care of quality of life? How effectively did integrating, sort of facial recognition or other AI sorts of technologies into daily life, how effectively did that solve people's problems? And as long as I think if we have a mindset of curiosity toward that, we're going to be able to integrate that into better city planning in the future. I look at cities like, where I see facial recognition being banned, for example, in Boston, in the state of Massachusetts. They've been pretty in front of that. And the state of Illinois in the US has also banned biometric information collection in any kind of public way. And they're still fairly new, those bans. So we don't have a lot of feedback on that yet, although it is interesting to see how they affect the downstream connections to people traveling through, like the airports, Transportation Security Administration, like the ability of TSA to roll out facial recognition through the security screening that they do is limited by and hampered by these cities that have these restrictions. So we do see how that plays out in a wider way. I think it's going to be interesting to integrate, a city that is using, like, last time I was in Hong Kong, it was really intriguing how much technology was integrated into the city around me, and the ability to surface meaningful things like when is the next train coming in a very reliable way is a service that doesn't invade my privacy and doesn't, sort of collect my data in order to provide me value and usefulness. Whereas, being screened as I walk through the airport with facial recognition and being tracked on my entire journey is a very different kind of invasion of my privacy. I think ultimately it's going to come down to how people instill cities and of the governments of the states and countries running around those cities. We don't know yet how those different things will play out. My vision for it is a blend. I really think what I presented to Amsterdam when I worked with them was more of that model of saying, let's look for all of the meaningful infrastructural types of things that we can connect with data and technology. Let's look at the ways we can surface what people are trying to achieve in the city and make that simpler for them, but through the digital infrastructure layer, and make it seamless and make it where people understand when the next bus or train is coming. People understand, what their best routes through the city are, where there might be a parade happening or a traffic jam happening. How can we make those things more real time and just in time for people as they traverse the city? How can we make recommendations to them that are, universal solid recommendations, or if they opt in and they allow their data to be integrated with the system to make personalized recommendations. There are ways we can do that without being invasive, without being presumptuous about what people are comfortable with, and that provide better experiences for everyone.
I think the entire world has got to know that tech is playing such an integral role in creating a better future, whether it's personal future or business. I mean, because it's that tool. I mean, just a simple tech that we live with on a day-to-day basis, or mobiles. And I mean, it's something that is completely taken over alive. And without it, you cannot travel, you cannot buy things, you cannot do anything without it. But yes, like you rightfully pointed out, there is a line between invasive and non-invasive. There are companies, because data has become the new oil, and they have taken the approach of manipulating, hoarding our data. And I think that's the balance that we need to find, that how do we build a technology which is human first, where it's the model is not exploitative, but it's something which is, it holds hands and takes us forward. Again, I mean, future of work is is something that you speak about a lot, and COVID kind of was a game changer for how we do work. COVID happened, and then we got into like a full remote model, and then we tried the hybrid model, and then now we've again back to like the physical model, and people are still experimenting. What is you think the future of work going to look like with the tech stack such as AI and metaverse like coming up?
If you've ever worked inside a large corporation, you've probably experienced this tendency of a corporation to do sort of centralization and decentralization. Like there's a tendency to go through trends of expansion and contraction. And I think we're probably going to be seeing that as in terms of that remote and hybrid and on-premise work trend for quite some time. There seems to be a lot of interest on the part of employers and managers in having people on premises, even though they stand to benefit from cost savings in terms of if we can let office leases go or reduce the amount of space that we need for physical premises, then we'd say. But it doesn't seem like, for the most part, most leaders that I speak with are not very comfortable with the The ability to manage effectively remote teams, the ability to build culture around remote teams, the ability to understand that there's a focus and a shared sense of purpose and direction with the work that's being done. And I think that's fair. I also think that it is not true. I think that we do have the opportunity to learn very good remote management skills. Plenty of companies have already been doing it for a very long time, well before COVID. I think that we have the opportunity to build culture remotely. And again, plenty of companies have been doing it before COVID. The opportunity to create focus and direction in remote and hybrid teams is also there. It is not easy. I'll be the first to admit that. I run my company fully remotely. Everybody that's part of my extended teams is all in far-flung locations, from California to Portugal to India to, all over the world. And it's difficult, but it does require that the leadership and everyone participating are able to share some vocabulary, are able to share some understanding of what it is we're trying to do. And that comes back to what I talk about in the book a lot, in both A Future So Bright and Tech Humanist, this sense of this strategic organizational purpose, really having an understanding of what the company exists to do and is trying to do at scale, and not in an ambiguous mission statement that's like, we strive to be the best in the world at blah, blah, blah. No, because nobody can really internalize that. But if we can distill our purpose, what we really are trying to achieve in terms of the organization's, raison d'etre, like the reason it exists, aligned with what people outside the organization are trying to achieve. If we can find that and articulate it in a 3 to 5 to maybe 7 word statement. I like to use the example that seems clear for people is thinking about Disney theme parks, Disney World, Disneyland. They use the 3 word, or theirs would be articulated as create magical experiences. It's as simple as that. And so anyone, whether they're working remotely or on site, whether they're a janitor who's sweeping out a store or a person who's on the phone taking reservations, they can understand that the thing that they need to be contributing to is to create magical experiences for people. And if that means overstepping what is said to be the scope of your job role, then you will do it. If it means using more technology to help deploy what you're doing more effectively, then you will do it. And I think that will really help us achieve not only this better understanding of creating culture through hybrid and remote environments and shared purpose and direction. I really think it gets us to this point where we start to have a better communication and understanding around why automation and technology tools belong in the mix of the future of work. Why we need to be bringing more tools that help us accelerate toward the experiences we're trying to create, if we're in service of this clearly articulated strategic organizational purpose. Because whatever that purpose is, it very likely stands to be done better or more effectively. And there are generally going to be some kinds of tools that can help us do that. So I think that really gets us closer to understanding also where the upskilling and reskilling opportunities are, and where we can begin rolling people when we have tools that can more effectively do something that used to be part of someone else's job description or a person's job description, then that person can now be looked at as someone who has capacity to learn a new tool and learn something else. I think we undervalue the institutional knowledge and the culture that we've created in our human resources and the people that are part of our organizations. So if we're really committed to trying to create that culture and create that focus, then we have to commit all the way and really understand that deployment of AI and automation goes hand in hand with really thinking deeply about reskilling and upskilling totally within that culture and the focus as driven by that strategic organizational purpose. Those are not easy discussions to have. They're not clear for everyone. They need a lot of work and practice. But I think that if you are committed to it, you stand to benefit and you stand to roll out a very effective organization for the future.
Right. You also speak about the future of education. Here in India, rote learning is very big. I mean, the students kind of wait till the end moment, they mug up and they sit for the exams. with all of these tech converging, what is the future of education gonna look like? Because I have an 8-year-old son. He's in a online school. So today he was in an exam, and in his exam he was taking help because it's an online class. So he was taking help of ChatGPT. How is this gonna? Is there like a right and wrong or usage of AI gonna pan out in the near future? How's the education gonna play out?
So I think it's interesting. I did actually just have a conversation the other day with someone who had graduated fairly recently from school in India. And he was talking about the rote education that he experienced as well, and the cramming for exams and that sort of thing. I think it's actually a fairly common experience. I think probably worldwide that there's any number of students who cram for exams, but don't we all also relate to the idea that if we have the opportunity to be taught well and to interact well about the subject, we learn better and retain better, and we are able to apply that knowledge better. So I think there's an incredible opportunity with conversational AI, with the kind of tools that are emerging, not necessarily ChatGPT per se, only because ChatGPT, as we all know, is trained on public data, on the open web. And so, and it has famously, these hallucinations, which is a term that I don't like. But it because it sounds like a human thing to do, but it famously has misinformation. It makes wrong suggestions. But if we had educational specific tools that were structured around conversational AI, I can't see anything but positive that comes out of students being driven by their own curiosity to ask questions inside of this, curriculum-driven conversational model that allows them to interact with curiosity and genuine sense of wonder about the topic that they're exploring, whether that's Indian history or chemical engineering or whatever it might be. If those tools can help students, come to their studies with an actual sense of involvement, then they're actually going to learn better. And I think today, even, students using ChatGPT for essays, for example, I think that there is speak with a lot of educators. I just did a guest lecture last night. I'm doing another guest lecture tomorrow. I'm doing a lot of guest lectures at universities and speaking with a lot of educators. And educators are understandably concerned. And there is a kind of detect and destroy approach to ChatGPT as used in education. And I think that is perhaps a little rash. It was understandable, maybe earlier in the ChatGPT rollout, late 2022, early 2023, we were all a little panicked about what this would mean for education. But here in late 2023 and beyond, I think that we cannot deny that it has become a very, in a sense, stable part of our environment. Everybody is using it. Like there's just about nobody that I speak to anymore who isn't using ChatGPT or some equivalent, Claude or Bard or whatever, in their daily lives. And I think we just have to accept that means the students coming out of school are going to be expected to be proficient at these tools and know how to use them well. That means being able to write a good prompt. That means being able to understand that what's being given back to you may not be accurate. We need to be teaching students those things, not forcing them not to, or trying to force them not to use those tools so that they're in fact they're hobbled by the time they get into the working world and they don't have a proper handle on how to appropriately use the tools. So I think that's the opportunity, is to say, let's have you use ChatGPT or another generative AI tool to write your essay. But instead of only submitting the essay for review, show me the prompts that you used to generate what output and how those prompts changed as you got different output and you said, well, actually what I wanted the essay to be about was about Indian history, since independence. And now it has this kind of result, or it's like Indian history since independence for this state. And now I've got this result. And the more you refine it, the more you understand what kind of outputs you're going to get. That's a good training for the student. It is also a good training for the student to be able to give clear direction as a manager later in life, if you want to give direction to humans, it helps you to be able to articulate your instructions very well. So that I can't see that there's anything not helpful about really incorporating the skill of prompt writing and clear direction and instruction for kids and students all along the way, honestly.
Right. So this is the future, and is something, rather than avoiding, it's something that we should embrace, not run away from it, but go towards it, because it is the inevitable future. And the way these LLMs are growing, I mean, what's to say that in the next few years, teachers and coders could get replaced? Is that something that you think about? Because this is 2023, and this is maybe giving the reference of just ChatGPT. It's version 4.
Right.
How would this pan out maybe in another 5 years' time, when possibly we have ChatGPT 6 or 5, and where it's trained on more and more data? Because even currently we have text to code, which does really, really good. And do you see teachers, coders get replaced, or are they going to iterate and find new jobs? What's the future that you're seeing over here?
I think that there's a mix of those realities. There's certainly there are going to be decisions made by leaders, institutional leaders, organizational leaders, that are going to be focused on cost cutting, that are going to be focused on what they believe, where they believe the efficiencies are, and that will eliminate jobs. It is not the technology that eliminates the jobs. It's the leaders who are being short-sighted and cost effective, or, looking for cost efficiencies that eliminate the jobs. So I want to be clear about that. The technology is a useful tool for for leaders to use that excuse to eliminate jobs. But I also think that if we have the longer view in leadership, if leaders take a more humanistic and integrative approach, we have the opportunity to reduce the burden on teachers. Teachers in many environments, many places, have loads of students that they can't really pay good attention to, that they can't give instruction to, that they can't help appropriately. They're underpaid and they have too few resources. If we have the kinds of availability of resources that can actually help teachers be more effective and can actually help students learn more effectively, and it doesn't add a lot of overhead expense to the budgets of educational institutions, then I think that is going to make an incredible opportunity for both teachers and students, and for the educational institution itself. I think we have to be very intellectually honest about that model, though, and what it is we're trying to accomplish in that case. And that isn't necessarily as easy as it sounds, as I think it's easy to rationalize or justify that you're just trying to help students learn more effectively while you cut teacher jobs. I don't think that that's going to necessarily play out that way in every case. And it's certainly not going to play out that way kind of all at once. I think we're going to see schools be first to replace all of their teachers with AI. And there are probably going to be some disastrous side effects from that we're all going to read about and hear about in the news. And it will scare other educational leaders away from doing the same. So it'll be sort of a stagger step. And I think we'll learn in the process about what some of the harmful effects are of taking such a rash and extreme approach. We need humans to interact with other humans in a variety of ways, and humans value human interaction. We value what we get from technology tools because of their efficiency and their ability to outperform us. We can marvel at the speed and the accuracy that tools like AI are able to have in digesting a body of data, a data set, and then producing some kind of useful determination from that data set that we can hold up as an insight. But it isn't an insight until it's our insight. We're the ones who are applying meaning and context and culture and understanding to that result and using it as an insight. If we're able to understand that delineation between the tool as enabler and the marvel of how fast and effectively and usefully it can provide, determinations and results that we can then use as insights for decision making, for rolling out into larger deployments, then we have an incredible opportunity to make a lot of really great improvements and really do this well. If we're short-sighted about it, if we're greedy about it, if we're impatient about it, then we won't see very good results. And I think we're going to see both of those things play out. We will see cases where people make very good decisions, and it will be wonderful to see what comes of that. We will see situations where people make very bad decisions, and we will see what comes of that. And we'll just have to learn from both examples along the way and hopefully make better decisions as time goes on.
Right. I think the best part about us humans is that we learn and we, even at the most difficult situations, we strive to do something which creates a better future. I mean, that's what's been happening. And I hope that kind of pans out in the near future. Really, really appreciate you taking time and being part of the podcast. My last question.
Thank you, Eddie.
What comes next for you? And maybe it'll be nice if you could paint a picture of what the world could look like in the next 10 years.
Oh, well, I mean, I think that we have been talking about a picture of what the world could look like in the next 10 years. I think we're likely to see decisions being made about technology and about culture that are short-sighted and impatient and greedy. And we're also likely to see some very visionary uses of these tools. And that's the mix we're going to see. We're going to see more climate crisis. We're going to see more geopolitical upheaval. We're going to see more misinformation and disinformation and how that affects political processes and the loss of democracy in many places. And we're also going to see people really trying to overcome those limitations and to really try to solve problems. And I think we should look for every opportunity to be encouraged by the people who are trying to overcome the momentum of those exponential change factors, the climate, the geopolitics, all of that stuff, and trying to solve human problems at scale. So for me, what comes next is still that. It's still focusing on doing the work that I've been able to do and have been so grateful to be able to do with companies, organizations, and cities around the world, helping them think more clearly and make better decisions about the tech-driven future for all of us so that we can enjoy, hopefully, the better version of that dichotomy of the worst and the best possible futures. I'd love for us to be constantly pushing toward the brightest possible future.
Thank you, Kate. Really, really appreciate you taking time and being part of the podcast. Yes, there's no utopia over here, but I think if we strive together, we could go towards that protopia. Thank you once again for taking time and being part of the podcast. And to my listeners, if you like what you see in here, then please press the subscribe button. And until next time, see you guys. Bye-bye. Thank you, Kate. Really appreciate this.
Thank you, Eddie.
Right.